I'm ready for another episode of Midweek Worship. Are you? Welcome to our middle of the week digital broadcast. If you've been with us, I hope that you're learning and growing. If you are just stumbling across this broadcast for the first time, we would love for you to know a little bit more about us and about our church. I don't want to do that every episode in the middle of the episode. So if you look below me, you're going to see some notes. It's going to tell you what we're going to talk about today. But if you notice in those notes, you'll also see a link to a YouTube video. That's our way of describing who we are and where we are and what we're doing. So why don't you check that video out after this is over with? It's just a few minutes long and it'll give you some more details about us. We're doing something unusual. We're doing something that's a little bit on the edge, and we're not trying to be controversial, but I am trying to be very realistic with you. Last week, we started talking about I just tried to make up a word. I just said benefits, but I'm using the benefits of membership. You can't put those two words together because it's hard to say. When I say membership, I'm talking about membership in Christ, becoming part of God's family, being adopted into His family. And last week, we talked about the one benefit that almost everybody talks about, almost everybody writes about. It's the benefit to your soul. It's the salvation benefit of becoming part of Christ. I said last week, actually, there are hundreds or maybe more than 1,000 ways to describe just what happens to a human soul by becoming part of the family of God. But what I've found is that most people struggle to talk about any other benefits. Occasionally, you'll find some writers, some pastors that will talk about or write about the spiritual benefits, what we're going to talk about today, but rarely do you find them talk about anything else. And what I want to do is just try to convince you there is a lot more that goes along with becoming a part of God's family than just what's waiting for you after you die. Because if it's only what's waiting for you after you die, it's still worth it. But a lot of people would ask, why don't I just wait until my very last moment if life isn't good on earth? If it's only good when I leave this earth, then why should I even bother while I'm here? I'll just wait until my dying breath and then I'll figure it out. Well, I want you to understand, no. These benefits start immediately. They're incredible. There's no way to categorize them except for these 4 very awkward categories that I've come up with for this week. So by spiritual benefits, I want to talk about what's going on in the spiritual side of things when life changes on the inside of you. If you watched last week's episode, I said when you become a new person, your hair color doesn't change, your eye color doesn't change, you probably don't get taller or shorter, but everything inside of you starts to change. Well, the Bible lists many ways that stuff changes on the inside of you, your forgiveness of sins and your assurance of salvation. But the Bible also talks about the things that God gives you, the spiritual gifts or the spiritual blessings that God gives you. These are found all over the Bible. There's a great verse in Galatians chapter 5 that lists some of these things off, and it just hits them rapid fire like a machine gun. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. It just hits these one after another. And if I wanted to, we could talk about each one of those just from that one verse, let alone the many other places in the Bible that describe it. But what I want to do is just get very honest with you. There are some things that happen spiritually inside of you, and you can't see them. They're happening, and you might even realize that they're happening over time, but you might not even notice that they're happening right away. And then all of a sudden, life starts to feel different. People start to relate to you differently. They start to notice that there's something different about you. And I think that those are some of those spiritual benefits that are going on inside of you that you might not even notice are happening at the moment. But over time, they make a pretty big impact, like a ginormous impact. And the Bible summarizes some of these things in a multitude of ways. I'm going to give you a verse of scripture. This is Jesus' words, and he says something that's fascinating in John chapter 16. If you just take this verse and you let it go right over your head, you're going to miss the deep significance of what's going on here. So I want to show you John chapter 16, verse 33. I'm going to read it for you, and then I'm going to ask you to commit this verse to memory. Because my guess is something is going to happen to you this week. It might be while you're driving. It might be while you're sitting in traffic. But something is going to happen to you this week, and you're going to need what this verse has to tell you this week. Here's John chapter 16, verse 33. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Again, this is John chapter 16, verse 33. And if you notice, Jesus is saying, I'm speaking all of these things about what God will do when he invites you into his family and the work that he does inside your soul, and it will lead to peace. Ever been stuck in traffic and ready to pull your hair out? That's when you need a little bit of peace. Ever been wrestling with circumstances? That's when you could use a little bit of peace. Well, what Jesus is saying here is pretty incredible. He's saying, I'm going to make two promises to you. You're going to love one, and you're not going to like the other one so much. The first promise, the promise that you're going to love, is that when you are in me and I am in you, when you are a member of God's family, and I'm not just talking about being a member with your name on the rolls of a church. That is not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about genuinely adopted and born again into God's family. When you go through the membership of God's global church, well, then you're going to have peace. And I don't know of a human being on the planet that doesn't want peace, or maybe even need a little bit more peace. But then he makes a second promise that's not so awesome. And the second promise, it's not an if, it's a when statement. It is, in this world, you will have tribulation. It's not a you might have. If tribulation comes, I want you to know that you have peace. It is a when tribulation comes, and it is basically a promise from God. Things are going to get hard. You are going to go through difficulties. And most people at this point would say, I don't get it. Jesus, aren't you bigger than the world? Aren't you more powerful than the problems that I have to face? If you're giving me peace, then why do I have to go through problems? And I think the last statement here is his way of explaining to us, you are going to have peace, but you're also going to have problems. And you can have both at the same time. And here's why. The last sentence, he says, take heart. I have overcome the world. In other words, the stuff that you're going through right now is temporary. The stuff that you're going through right now is powerful, but it's not all powerful. The eternal, all powerful God of the universe has called you out of your sin and into a relationship with himself. And that's why you can lay your head down amidst terrible problems and tons of difficulties and sleep like a baby with peace on the inside when stuff is freaking out around you on the outside, because the God of the universe, the one who has overcome this world, has also brought you into his family. I've showed you quotes in the past for some brilliant church leaders and some men and women that I really, really look up to. Well, one of those guys is Andrew Murray, who lived centuries ago. And Andrew Murray made this statement. I'll put it on the screens. He said, what a nobility would come into life if secret prayer were the giving away of life just for one day to the sure and safe keeping of a mighty and faithful God. Now, Think about what he just said for a second. Imagine how much more peaceful your life could be. Jeff's words, not Murray's words. If when you pray tonight, you have tons of things going wrong around you and the world is spinning out of control, but you give your life and you place it in the sure and safe hands. That's Andrew Murray's words. You place it in the sure and safe hands. Imagine what life would be like when you lay down and go to sleep, knowing that his hands are mighty and that he is faithful and he's never going to drop you. He's never going to fail you. Imagine the kind of peace that you would have reminding yourself that in this world you will have pain, Jesus has promised. But don't worry, my peace is bigger than this world. And it's bigger than this world because I have overcome the world. And the word overcome is basically, I have fought against the world and I was victorious. Everything and anything that life will throw your way, I have fought it and I was victorious. And now I am in you and you are in me. So I can give you victory over anything and everything that you're going through in life right now, which is where I want to wrap this episode up with. I'll leave a question for you on the screens. It's a beautiful question and one that I hope encourages you, even inspires you. So when this episode is over with, if you got some family around, why don't you talk about this question? If you're watching this with some friends, why don't you get into a group discussion? Because maybe this question will encourage your soul this week. Where do you need Christ to gain victory in your life today? He's already overcome the world. He already has victory over every problem of life or every pain of life. So what is the pain? Where are the problems that you're going through that you need Christ to gain victory and to give you peace with? I want you to think about that. Chop it up tonight as we wrap up. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you back here next week. Have a good night, y'all.